I am unashamed. What about you?
So I had a pretty interesting day yesterday. You know, we do these podcasts, and then yesterday after the podcast, we finished our show, our little treasure hunting show, the filming of it.
Yeah.
So we'll see where that goes. I'll keep you posted on that. But Jep was in town, so Jep and Jessica ate supper with us last night.
Then they stopped by and had a visit with us. It was kind of good.
I took him fishing. He caught 2 huge crappie out of Willie's Pond.
What was on the menu?
Actually, my lovely wife fixed up roast and gravy, potatoes and carrots in the roast, big pot of rice, spectacular. Because I had never eaten all day. It was one of the few days that I never had stopped and eaten since a chicken biscuit in the morning.
It's a good thing I brought that chicken biscuit to tide you over. So, Dad, I had Jay cooked the best boudin I've ever had. I've had a lot of good boudin, but he found some when he went to Venice last week fishing.
Ooh. He was actually cooking
So
that
good.
because I had to borrow some hooks.
He left me some, so I was familiar with that.
Willie's
good, wasn't it?
Willie's crappie have gotten so big that I had to get a bigger hook because you have to lift them over his bridge and the hooks would straighten. I mean, these are 2 to 2.5 pound crappie.
You told the story before. You had straightened one out, didn't know it. And
I had the old Jaws moment. I told Jep, he's like, "Where are you going?" I said, "I think we need some bigger hooks." So anyway, so this morning, so I didn't get to see my wife much. We didn't get to talk. And so this morning, she comes up and she's like, "We were so busy," because I was so tired. I don't even remember going to bed last night. I just basically collapsed after all that. And so she said, "I have a story for you." I said, "Okay." And so she said, now how did she say that? Here's how it said. Because we have this new place in Tennessee. We were in Austin, but we've made a move here. We got a place. We're fixed to be grandparents. It's a long story, but we've acquired a little farm in Tennessee. But she came in, and the older we get, the less we can hear as well. And I thought she came in and said, "Hey, I got a story for you." I said, "Oh, go for it." And here's what I thought she said. She said, "I met our neighbors on Intimacy." And I said, "There's a website called Intimacy?" And she said,
there's a town called Intercourse. We covered that yesterday.
She said, "I'm not even finishing this story." And so as she was walking away, she said, "I met our neighbors in Tennessee." And she just left. I mean, I never heard the story. And so I got Intimacy. I thought, because I was thinking, what in the world are you doing on a website called Intimacy? I mean, what, do we have a problem? I mean, it immediately escalated in my mind. And so, but being the good wife that she is, on the way down here, there's a train outside your door. Do you want to sing that song?
Long black train.
So she called me on the way down here, and she was laughing right off the bat. I was like, "Oh, I thought you were mad at me because I misheard." She's like, "That was ridiculous." She said, "So can I finish my story now?" I was like, "Yeah, finish the story." She said, "So I met the neighbors, and you're not going to believe what they told me." And I said, "What?" She said, "Welcome to the neighborhood." And actually, we're on the top of this hill. They're kind of to the right somewhere, but you can't see them. I mean, I'm completely secluded. But she said, "There's a lot of wildlife, as you can tell. I mean, there's deer in the yard." She said, "But we have confirmed the sighting of a black panther on this mountain."
Here we go.
So we just wanted you to know that. For those of you listening, Phil just had one of the greatest eye rolls that I've ever seen.
This Black Panther thing has been a fantasy.
I was right all along.
That was my first thought. So Si was right all along. They said they came out of their back door one day and the Black Panther was on their deck and jumped 10 feet into a tree. That was the story.
Oh, boy.
But Missy said as she talked, she also said that there were also 2 cougars. So we got 2 cougars and a black panther that I'm going to have to negotiate. So what do you think, Phil?
She's one of these high-strung women who are into
Phil, be careful.
various. Yeah.
Be careful about the plank in the eye, the
Conspiracy
sawdust.
theorists go along hand in hand with the sighting of cougars and panthers on the North American
You
continent.
know that since you
On the back porch.
the last
though.
podcast, you actually told about an undetermined critter that died in the walls of your bathroom. It could have been a baby panther.
I didn't check it to see, but I don't think we had a black panther up under there.
But you did have some blowfly. So Jay's, so that was your story?
Well, I just thought I'd share that with you.
I think that's pretty interesting. And the intimacy part is funny. So we were cleaning out a storage unit, and cleaning out storage units are always interesting because there's stuff in there that you forgot you put in there. And so it's kind of, I guess it's almost like what you do, Jace, with you find these little treasures, that you didn't even know you had, your stuff, but you forgot about it. So I saw this letter, and it was in a baggie. So it got my attention. And it's from me. Do you know who Mrs. W.T. Caraway is? Do you know who that
Never
is?
heard
That's
of.
Nanny. So that's Mom's grandmother. We call her Nanny.
Oh, and you wrote her a letter?
I wrote her a letter.
Where'd you find this?
It was in my storage unit.
Oh.
And so I guess Mom gave it to me.
And she went to the other side 40 years ago.
Well,
Mid-70s.
you got the gene. Kay is let's face it, she's a hoarder. I mean, when they come
Dad
out with
says
it,
she's not a
You don't
hoarder.
sift through her stuff looking for old letters. You will be there the rest of your life.
No, she's a hoarder. But Al, I've noticed that maybe this has turned into an intervention. You have picked up that side of the gene pool. You have hoarding
I
tendencies.
consider myself more of a historian than a hoarder, but because I was clean. The difference in me and Mom is you just heard me say I was cleaning out a storage bin.
Do you have the contents of the
I
letter?
do. I'm going to share that. So what I want to mention first is this is from Junction City, Arkansas, June 25th, 1971. That's when I sent this letter. So that means I was 6 years old, and it cost 8 cents, by the way, in 1971 to send this letter. And so inside, so here's my handwriting. I wanted to show you that from 6 years old. Apparently I had a few mistakes in there I had to
Good
fix.
night.
So here's what I said. Dear Nanny, I love you. How are you doing? I have been going to vacation Bible school for 5 days. See, I was going to the little church there in Junction City. I like to go to it. Now, here's the point I wanted to make on the podcast. I said this at 6. Jace at this time was 2, about to be 3. And no, you actually weren't even 2 yet because you were born in 69.
And I was in my 30s.
Yeah.
I had just started speaking in complete sentences.
You actually were in your 20s, right?
Probably maybe
Yeah,
20.
20s. So here's what I said. Here's what I told my great grandmother in 1971 at 6 years old. Jason is mean as ever.
You said that
You
at-
weren't 2 years old, and I'm reporting this.
Well, you got to remember though at
Jace,
2.
what is your defense for a charge like that?
I mean,
Well, at 2, you got to remember most people wait till they have these. At 2, I'd already killed my first squirrel. I had camped out under the house.
I remember that night.
I had already
2 years old?
you remember that night he got into the house, Dad?
Well, they make a big deal about I was lost, at 2.
3 o'clock in
and-
the morning, we heard the moaning, and I said, and it wasn't an animal. I said, what is that?
No, yeah.
We looked upon the house with a flashlight, and Jace was huddled up under the house at 3 o'clock in the morning.
With the dog.
I'm camping here. So I was
The more I dive into y'all's family background, I'm like, how did all 4 kids survive? I
Well, no, that is a
that's feat.
question. But when you said y'all, you're part of this family too, there, Hot Rod. So
Yeah, you're half,
don't
Robert.
try to subconsciously
We're
distance yourselves.
we were raised, and they were, and the letter proves it, so normal that would seem strange. We are the epitome of normalcy.
Well, I should.
But people look and they say, what in the world?
I should have waited and
Being
read.
normal is
I
tough.
should have waited and read this letter when Mom was on here because Mom has always said that Jace was a problem from birth, and this backs that up. Jason is as mean as ever. But I say, because I'm an encourager, that's the way brothers are. So I acknowledge that, you got to deal with your little brother. How are your cats doing? Our dogs are doing fine. I love you so much that I could die. That was my closing statement, which I don't know what that meant. Love, Alan. So
Kind of disturbing now that you're already using death references at 6
I love you
years
so
old.
much that I could die. I mean, that was a pretty
Who was
interesting
the
letter.
letter written to?
to
Was
my
this
nanny.
Kay's mom?
Yeah, her grandmother. So it was my
Kay's grandmother?
Yeah, it was my great grandmother. She's the one that I spent a lot of time with when I was a kid.
She's the one that basically raised your mama.
Right.
Because the other people, the mama and the dad of Miss Kay, they worked at the store every day. So she was raised by her grandmother.
Nanny's husband is the one that started Caraway's Grocery, I guess.
Yep.
And so Mom talks about in her speech, it's really interesting because when she talks about the hard times that she and Dad went through, it was the memory of what her grandmother, Nanny, told her, that one of these days you'll have to fight for your marriage. You know, when Mom does her speech, that's what she always says. And in that time, she said, I finally realized what she meant, that I would have to fight for my marriage. And she did.
Yep.
And she won because we're all still here. But I thought that was interesting. Jace, that was my finding. That was my treasure hunt.
Yeah. Well, if
my
you're a
own storage.
hoarder, you tend to stumble upon
Jay,
things.
your
50
brother
years
there,
old.
your older brother, was the epitome of what a young boy should be like. But when it came to you, he's found you to be lacking.
Well, you got to remember.
And I was saying it at 6.
You got to remember
And
when
here I am still grappling with Jason, dealing with him on a daily basis.
Jay, your past goes all the way back to when you were 2.
since we're being blunt here, these are the things that happen when the parents are away. It's every man for himself. I figured that out at 2. Most people have that epiphany at 14.
I look back on it now and I tell both of you
that's
I'm
funny.
embarrassed for my former behavior. I'm embarrassed, but I can't change it. I just can be forgiven.
But you know what? Us sitting here doing this podcast for the last 2 years shows you the power of grace, because we were rocky on the front end. But here we are all these years later, almost 50 years later, and we're having a Bible study and with hundreds of thousands of people in America. I mean, you tell me there's not a God.
Well, Al,
Man.
there was only one direction from where we started. Up.
Yeah,
It was up or over, right? What's interesting is, that this would have been pretty much at the heart of the hardest times, because Willie was born the next year. He was born in 72. So Mom would have been just about getting pregnant with Willie, right?
You got to remember, the only time I remember being real mean as a kid was when Willie had the unfortunate incident of breaking his leg, and he was in a body cast for a few months. Remember that? He was just in one place. And boy, because when that happened,
he was
I remember
about 2 when that happened.
I remember thinking,
2 or 3.
I'm glad he's better, but I'm fixing to make up for all the misery, because he just was laying there. He couldn't. I mean, you just come by and thump him on the head.
I made him a way to move around by getting
creeper.
one of those little wagons, and he could take both hands.
Yeah.
And he could flit around on the floor.
That's right. You know what he was
By
like?
the way, how did he break his leg?
He fell off a slide.
Yeah.
It was at the daycare place
that's right.
after school.
Look, there's what's weird is because you have memory problems the older you get. But I remember being at the top of that and looking down and seeing all the tree roots. And here I'm a little kid, 4 or 5 years old, thinking, this is dangerous.
Little did you know.
You literally were sliding down onto tree roots.
Yep.
And
It was a
of course,
bad
it's
setup.
I don't know what
I
year
remember
that
when
was.
we got the call, you say your son has just broken his leg. I said, what? And off the how? And he fell off the slide.
I probably
whatever.
pushed him, but
I was
I
gonna
can't
say,
remember. I mean, we were all up there trying to just beat each other to the punch to slide down on a bunch of tree roots.
Yep.
But he's in a full body cast or waist down. What?
Yeah,
It started
was-
at his chest right here.
Because I just remember after
That
a few
opening
weeks
for his
went
stomach,
by.
I think.
Well, it was on the backside. He had an opening.
Well, yeah, but trust me, the smell started to linger at a man being on the floor with not the greatest of supervision.
Well,
It
and
just
he was-
become an odor that's indescribable.
Well, he was wearing diapers. Let's take a break. So Jay's dad refers to you and I as the young bucks but I don't feel too young anymore. Do you feel young?
No.
You're about to be a grandfather. I have 6 grandchildren. Even Zach's in his 40s, but he's getting up there too. One of the things you notice about getting older is you have a few more aches and a few more pains. It's just kind of what naturally tends to happen. And we found out from our conversation with Dr. McQuillan from Omega XL that the underlying cause is inflammation. And, we're all going to face that. And so when that inflammation happens, we have to neutralize. That's where you get the stiff joints and the muscles. So they have a product that they get out of some mussels that they grow in the pristine waters of New Zealand.
This actually works.
And it works. There's no doubt. Dad and I both take it. It's the only thing Dad takes. Now, I take a few other things, but he just takes this. It's helped him with the inflammation. And if you want to get started and try this, you go to omegaxl.com/Phil. You're going to buy a bottle. You get a second bottle for free. That gives you a couple of months to try it. It's about the time when you really start to feel it. OmegaXL.com/Phil, or you can give them a call at 800-844-4888. That's 800-844-4888. I don't know that he was potty trained or not, but he was wearing diapers, and I had to change a lot of those diapers because, as you said, we were kind of on our own. So,
Jase, did you volunteer along with your brother to change
never
the diapers?
changed.
he never changed one.
I said, hey, look, I gave him some encouragement. I said, I hope you make it.
So Dad had picked up this little creeper, and the cast started at his chest, and on one leg, the bad leg, it went all the way to his ankle, and on the good leg, it went to his knee. So he was literally.
How old was Will at that time?
He was
Probably
between 2 and 3.
Yeah,
I thought he was older than that.
No, he wasn't.
I feel bad now for being mean.
Because I can relate it to where we were living. We were living in that trailer up at Jake's Trailer Park, which was right around 74.
What's so weird is I remember the visual images of that.
Because you were only 2 years older, so I mean, you were
I was
like
young, but I remember.
5. Yeah. It was an interesting.
And
summer.
now we're all 3 old men.
Yeah.
But it was like he was a look.
Y'all don't like to be
You guys
called young
got
bucks.
elevated from young bucks to old men right
But
there.
he
Young
stayed there
bucks have
so
become
long.
old bucks.
He stayed there so long, he was like a talking piece of furniture. Because no matter where you went or what you did, he was just laying in the same spot.
He poured a long time.
It was.
But he was
It was
just
months.
right in front of the TV, which they had the TV on, but it was just snow, and which may answer a lot of
I wonder if
problems
that was.
about
I
it.
just thought about it. It just hit me. He's had a lot of knee problems. I wonder if that's the same leg.
That's what it is.
Because that leg busted, that femur busted so bad they had to
shattered.
go in and like put it together with screws and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
yeah. He had a
That's
big
what it is.
rod in his
That's
leg.
why that knee is so bad. He's had to have it fixed
Yeah,
twice.
he suffered from that.
Yep. Yeah, I never knew. And I wonder. I got knee problems, and I had a club foot when I was born. You remember me with the club foot?
Yep.
And so
Both your feet were like this.
yeah,
Instead of like this, you standing there,
yeah,
you were like that.
yeah. This one was
Yeah,
clubbed.
your
in.
leg in the womb, it had just, you did both your feet were,
Not
so
enough.
they just put a reverse cast on, but when that healed up, it never was right.
No,
After
and
that.
this right leg has been a problem.
not enough forks in the tree.
Well, the biggest problem, Jase, Mom is 17, Dad is 19. So literally, teenagers birthed and raised me, which is amazing. I'm still here. And when they went to pull me out, I don't know if they do it this way now. They couldn't get me out of there, so they put the forceps on my head and literally just manhandled me out of the womb.
You were scarred up on your-
my head was all lumpy.
Nobody taught. Look, when my son was born, Reed, and I looked at him, I thought, because he had. I mean,
That's what a redneck says.
yeah.
When he said,
So it wasn't my precious child.
Well, he had a cone head because they had used the forceps, and so Missy was like, "What do you think?" I said, "Well, he's literally a cone head, but we're gonna love him anyway." That's what I said because I didn't know the head sculptor of a newborn baby
Is
was
that pliable?
Yeah, I
didn't know
thought,
that.
well, boy, this is going to get a lot of jokes in high school because and I was thinking, is that where they got the idea about the cone heads? And I mean, my mind was just racing. I thought we have a cone head because it was drastic.
so when they're pulling me out, one of the forceps slips off and hits me in the eye. And so when I was born, my eyes didn't open because I had this one that was damaged. So Mom, being 17 years old, she assumed after about 5 days and my eyes didn't open that I was like a kitten or a dog, where your eyes
like
don't.
9 days.
Yeah, 9 days before your eyes open. So that that's what she came to in her mind. Nobody, I guess, realized that I had actually been damaged, from birth. So I just thought it was interesting that's what happened.
That theme carried out through the rest of our lives. Because, when I broke both of my bones in my left arm on about day 3 of that, still at the house, Phil got back from his trip. And I was like, he pulled in the yard and I ran down there and I was like, hey, Dad, look at my sprained arm. Phil said, both bones are broken. You need to go to the ER right now. How long has this been going on? I was like, days. He's like, that bound to hurt. I was like, well, it hurt for the first couple of days, but it actually feels better.
I said, get him to the hospital. She said, you go where? I said, right now.
They took me up there, and the first thing they had to do was re-break it. It was already trying to
grow back
together.
Yeah.
So that was searing pain.
Well, Jason,
I'm not a bone surgeon, but I looked at that. She always sprained his arm. Look, I looked at it. I said, it's broken in 2 places. Go up there and get him to the hospital.
I remember the doctor interrogating Kay because they were like, why did you wait so long to bring this in? She's like, well, I thought it was sprained. He was like, the bones are protruding under his skin.
I remember I did it. I'm the one that did it because we were playing football. Yeah. We were watching a football game. We were at the house. And so back in those days, we liked to, whatever we were watching, then we implemented. So we were doing a goal line defense at the couch. Remember, Jays?
I remember. You never have gotten this story right. I was actually running for the touchdown, and you threw a pillow
and swept your legs. It was a leg sweep.
Yeah, and the pillow caught my feet, and I did about 2 flips and fell on my arm.
And he broke both those. So I'm like, he's hurt, So I went down and told Mom and Granny are watching Dallas. That's back when Dallas was a big thing.
All they worried about is who shot JR.
So I said, I think Jay's is hurt up here. And they said, well, wait till the show's over, and then we'll come.
3 days later, I'm going
3 days later.
That's pretty
Mom used to tell that story when she got bit by a cottonmouth water moccasin, and Paul was looked at it and said, "No, she'll be all right." And her legs start swelling up, and she'll be fine. And Granny's like, "I think she's sick." Mom's vomiting. Probably the leg is like 5 times the size of its original size.
She literally had been bitten by a cottonmouth.
She did, and she said there were red streaks running up her leg, and Paul and Granny said, "James Robertson, you better take her to the hospital now." And Mom always said that he said, "Well, let me finish my show and I'll run her up there."
People are gonna hear this.
You gotta laugh about it. Right?
Well, it's just it was our way. I mean, through the years we've changed, and now we will take people in.
We're all mellow now, ladies and gentlemen. That's why we're normal now.
I just look at that's why we're so tough, because we just, like Jay said, we kind of learned early to fend for yourself. The Almighty had to look out for you.
It is.
Oh, that's pretty. All right, memory lane. So back to Matthew chapter 12 is where we're at in our text today.
This is one of my favorite chapters because it addresses this ritualistic versus relationship.
Yeah.
What is it going to be? It was the Sabbath made for man, you put it that way in John, or man for the Sabbath?
You would think that Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath and his disciples were hungry and began to pick some heads of grain and eat them. You would think nobody would mind, Jace, no matter what day it was, for you to walk through the wheat fields and pick a few kernels and eat them. You would think that wouldn't be an issue.
Well,
what kind of mind makes that an issue?
Because they have a law that said, and God made the law, that he wanted you to rest at certain time. There's a time
Right.
to rest.
Work 6 days and rest 1.
Yeah, which
then
means you did a lot of work.
So but the legalistic part of it comes in is what does rest mean? Because Jay's told a story a few podcasts ago about not even to this day not pushing the button on an elevator.
On modern day, they have the elevators that stop on every floor without the button being pushed.
So that
And right beside it, if you're not a believer, you can ride that elevator. Of course, I thought this is the ride to hell. I mean, because if you're not a believer, you can ride here and push the button.
push whatever button you want to.
Well, right. It just seems so weird.
But that's where you get into. Let's take a break. So we did a podcast a little while back about Jill's book, Zach, and I know you self-published it. How's the book doing? And tell us a little bit about how you did that, because one of our new sponsors is a part of that.
Well, it's doing real well. It's called Shallow. Jill, you can outsource pretty much everything, every component of it. The one thing that Jill did not outsource was the design of the cover, which all these girls like, man, love the cover of your book. Where'd you get that? And she said, it's actually a sweater that Jill saw at the thrift store. She bought the sweater, and then she went on Canva, and she had no experience with that kind of design work, but it was so easy to do that she literally built the book cover herself on Canva, and it was kind of kind of an anticlimactic story, but that's what she did.
Well, it really makes graphic artwork something that anybody can do, and that's what's really interesting about this company. It's called Canva Pro, and you can use 4 other people. You can go Canva Pro. It's $12.99 a month, but you're able to work together. You save on your time planning, you're creating, and you're posting on social media. So if you want to design like a pro with Canva Pro, you go to canva.me/unashamed. You're going to get a free 45-day extended trial if you use that promo code. So that's a great chance to see if it's something you really like. Canva.me, canva.me/unashamed. You're going to get 45-day free extended trial and see if it's something that can help you out. That's what you get into, though, Dad. So while one will be picking grain and eating a bite, another is pushing a button. So when does it stop? Do you just lay there and never lift your hand to eat? Or I don't know. If you get into the legalistic aspect of what is rest versus what is work, but to Jase's point, the whole idea was God made the law to protect people, and so they would understand that you need to rest.
Yeah.
You need a day of rest.
Just don't look like a wild man beating the air every day, 24/7. Yeah, there's a lot of movers and shakers. It'd be good for them, but
yeah. Well, even God rested on the Sabbath day,
Right.
which is where this idea came from. But
there's
there's something to be said about that, because it seems like our culture, the problem is they're resting with a lot of people for 6 days and working 1.
you got a point.
That's true.
I mean, there's places around here that can't even find anybody to work.
Yeah.
But
we got a global supply chain problem because nobody wants to work.
Exactly.
But it's
we've
weird.
taken the Sabbath to extreme.
I mean, we're in Matthew 12. It's just we got to deal with it.
Well, and again, I think back to what led into this, the last podcast when y'all closed out those 3 verses, come to me who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. I mean, Jesus is basically telling them, look, if you'll trust in me, you won't have to worry about stuff like they're fixing to get into, because I'm going to take all that. It's not going to be on you to have to be perfect and have to do everything right. I'm the one, put the burden on me. So I think he sets that up because of what's about to happen. Because the first thing they do when they see it is they say, look, your disciples are doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath.
They're basically pointing to him and saying, you're breaking the law.
That's right.
It sounds like modern day America and what we do to the Constitution of the United States.
Yeah.
I mean, these cases keep going up before the Supreme Court because people are pointing fingers saying, and they're right in some cases and wrong in other ones, but they argue about the law it's a continual, massive group of individual lawyers, law keepers, lawbreakers. I mean, passing legislation, this and that, Supreme Court. You're like, man has been, what's the word, wrestling with the law.
Yeah.
For ever since they've been on planet Earth, Al.
Yeah, and you're right. And I'd say to your point, a modern example of this, during the pandemic, you have these mandates that made by a president or government. They're not law.
They're not law.
They're just a mandate. Just somebody says, hey, I say you got to do this. So then the whole thing becomes a back and forth between those who are willing to do it, not willing to do it, telling on people that are, you're telling on an airplane. I mean, if you fly now, you realize it's just a constant
They go to
stress.
great lengths to make sure how they view a certain statute is implemented, but it's an age-old struggle.
Yep.
Men and law, in my opinion, which is a great thing when you finally hear about the grace of God instead of His laws. It's a sigh of relief.
Right.
I mean, He's not counting men's sins against them. Not when you break it.
Well, these guys here, I love what Jesus says here. He says he uses the whole David story to kind of, because these guys were obsessed with the temple worship and what went on in the temple. And he told the story about when David ate the bread in the temple. I love this in verse 6, though. This is the stinger here. He said, "But I say to you that something greater than the temple is here." Mm. So they're looking at the rules and they're worshiping these rules. They're worshiping the temple of God, and Jesus is like, y'all don't understand what just arrived.
Exactly.
All this was pointing to me. It's pointing to the kingdom that I brought, and you're focusing on everything but what that's pointing to.
Yep.
That's a powerful verse.
Well, and it leads to that verse 8 where he said, "For the Son of Man," which the last podcast, I picked up those verses that reference that. Well, here's another one. He's like, "The Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." So he was making a point. It's not so much what you do, because I know the heart, I understand freedom, and I'm the creator of this, which we know by John when he said it's not about the Sabbath being made for man or man made for the Sabbath, but the Sabbath for man.
Right.
And he wrote the law and gave it to Moses.
But you just realize, too, what authority he is interjecting here.
Woo.
Saying, hey.
I am the Sabbath.
Yeah. Well, that's what made these guys so mad. I mean, he's basically claiming lordship. And I think at the end of the day, they were comfortable with their law. They were comfortable with their religion because they could have their own autonomy and still be in charge of their own way. And Jesus comes on the scene and he says, no, he said, I'm Lord of all that and I'm the only way. That was his offense. That's what made him angry, was that he was the status. It was wrecking their entire system, and they made him very uncomfortable. Obviously.
Well, you remember
So when they ratchet this up, starting with "don't eat the grain," they're breaking the law, and then the next thing they say, you're breaking the law. Man with a shriveled hand was there looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they're just searching to try to get, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? Now we've gone from, is it lawful to eat some wheat when you walk through it on the Sabbath? What about healing somebody's disease? You would think they would cut the dude a little slack. I mean, the man's got a shriveled hand. You'd think this, you fixed that? You say, yeah, on the Sabbath? And they're making an issue of you can't do that on the Sabbath. It's what legalism does, Al.
Well, and this one was more of a setup. This was an ambush.
Oh, yeah.
Because they saw this guy and they asked the question just to try. This is when they start testing him then.
Yeah.
Of course, then he comes back and says, if any of you has a sheep and it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will you not take hold of it and lift it out? How much more valuable is a man than a sheep? Therefore, it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
He puts it right back on him.
You'd think it wouldn't be an issue, but the more I hear about Facebook and the things they come up with, I've never clicked on to the Facebook, but I just hear people talking about what they heard on the Facebook. So if you just look at it logically, you say, are all these things still going on right before us, and we just don't miss it? We miss it, or you say this legalistic attitude? It's still everywhere, Al.
Oh yeah. Well, and of course, the modern thing is what a lot of modern people do is turn Sunday into the Sabbath. They call that the Sabbath, and then there's certain things you can do. I remember I was playing golf one day on a Sunday afternoon, and some guy came up and he was like, "Why are you playing golf on Sunday?" I said, "Well, it's the only day I could play this week."
They've asked me.
It was like you couldn't do it because it was like you're breaking the Sabbath. I was like,
They've asked me, said, how's it going? I said, pretty good. It's Sunday morning. And I said, I'm fresh out of the duck blind. And they said, you hunted ducks on Sunday? I said, yeah, now I'm here meeting with the brothers. I said, good to see y'all. And they're like, well, I don't know about that, if you hunting ducks on the Sabbath.
It's like in some states they close it for Christmas because they think it's sacrilegious.
Right.
I'm like, first of all, that's not even the day.
It's just a day.
Somebody's made that day up. And why not have a tradition with family and celebrate Jesus and his creation as you prepare the meal? And oh no, we've made this the Sabbath.
Which is a modern of what these guys are doing. Let's take another break. So, Dad, what's your favorite tree?
Ball cypress.
Oh, I knew you were going to say that. You love the cypress tree. Does it take you back because of the old hole we used to hunt out of the cypress tree? Is that where your affinity for the cypress tree
It's
goes?
a beautiful tree. It's one of the toughest trees that ever was. A big wind will blow a lot of trees down, but the ball cypress are still standing.
It's true. And it
Root
makes
system, great root system.
it makes some beautiful furniture, and you can make duck blinds out of them. It's really good.
I love them.
So-
I plant them. I plant thousands of them.
So we love trees. Dad plants a lot of trees. And for you may say, well, I'm living in a neighborhood. I may not be able to plant a ball cypress, but one of our sponsors is a company called Fast Growing Trees, and they've got the sort of trees that you can plant in your backyard or in your front yard or wherever you want to do it. Lisa and I have ordered these before. They come in great shape. They were very easy for us to take and plant. They have a 30-day Alive and Thrive guarantee, which means they're going to arrive happy, healthy, and ready for planting. So now through November 30th, go to fastgrowingtrees.com/Robertson, and you're going to get 15% off your order. It's 15% off fastgrowingtrees.com/Robertson.
Well, I put a summation. I just did this based on this chapter, but comparing the Pharisees with Jesus, I mean, he made some references here that you just need to make sure you're on the right side of things. Because, the first thing he referenced, or the most disturbing thing, not the first, but he says that they condemn the innocent. He said that in verse 7. If you had known what these words mean, I desire mercy, not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the innocent. You never want to be going around trying to enforce law, modern day or in their day, that is condemning people that are innocent. You don't know people's hearts. You can't base, they saw some heads being picked in a field, and they immediately brought condemnation. Well, when you think of the opposite, what did Jesus eventually do? He completely restored. Mm-hmm. He makes people innocent.
I've never thought that you might work that into, they passed a law that said you can now, if you're a woman, kill your child if you don't want him. Just kill him. Abort him. Well, it sounds like to me you just passed an edict that condemning and killing your own offspring is good. You're good to go because it's the law.
Exactly.
A woman has the right to kill her child if she wants to.
Not against the law.
Yeah, what happened in this
So
case
they're
was
doing
way
the same
more
thing
innocent.
these Pharisees are doing.
Exactly.
Think about the irony of the Pharisees' contrast to Jesus here. Jesus is coming to heal people and restore people. And then verse 14 says the Pharisees went out when they saw him doing this. They conspired against him as to how they might destroy him. So he's building and he's healing, and they're like, oh, we have to destroy. Which I think is a hallmark of kind of a Pharisaical mindset is, are you a divisive person trying to destroy what's going on good in the kingdom? And if you are, you probably need to check yourself, because that's what they do. That's what Pharisees do. They destroy things. They don't build anything.
Yeah, you made a point, Zach, in a lesson one time I've never forgotten about how much more difficult it is to build something than to come in and destroy it. You can wipe it out quick, and you gave an illustration about your boys. One of them was made a massive Lego village, spent all day building it, and the other one came in, destroyed it in about 10 minutes. And but that stuck with me because I thought that's what the evil one does. He comes to kill and destroy.
Yeah.
And look, that's easy. It's hard to build.
That's right.
Well, that's where I was getting this. They were condemning the innocent 12:7. When he gets to 9, it says, going on from that place, he found a man with a shriveled hand, and looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, they asked him, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? Well, here we go. First, we're picking heads in the field and eating, but now it's like, well, is it lawful to heal? So then he said to the man, stretch out your hand. So he stretched it out, and it was completely restored, just as sound as the other.
Which, by the way, if you're looking for a miracle,
And what was the,
that's a miracle.
but what,
A shriveled hand to perfect hand.
So what was the response to the Pharisees? Jay?
Well, they went out and plotted how they might kill Jesus. Now, you just think about that. When your narrative is to a point,
if you help a man who had a shriveled hand and you ate some grain on Saturday morning, we're going to kill you. And they didn't think that there was anything wrong.
You'll kill the man who can make another man's hand perfectly new. That's not a guy I'd be looking to kill.
I mean, but this is we see this all the time. Though. How many people do we know personally that we've seen doing the work of the kingdom? They're actively acting like Jesus, and then other people, religious people, come after them and try to destroy them.
Yep.
I mean, it's
All
almost
the
like
time.
you have to. I mean, it's like you have to expect it if you're doing kingdom work and you're serving people. Then all I got to say is get ready because somebody's coming in to take you
I
out.
always say the worst arrow, Zach, is the one in the back. You know?
exactly. So I wanted to make these analogies. So you get this one, condemning the innocent. Jesus, what is he doing? He's completely restoring people, which is the opposite. 2, he referenced this house of God in 12:4 because the Pharisee mind makes the actual house holy. And eventually Jesus, we know what he did. He made people holy who became the house of God. How many references about, Hebrews
Pretty
3:4 is a good one. Mm-hmm. The consecrated bread was an issue in chapter 12 and verse 4. And we know in John, Jesus said, I'm the bread of life. It's not about the actual cracker. It's about what that represents. And that goes back to the reference about hungering and thirsting after righteousness also. Then the reference we've already said about it was they said he was doing it unlawful. And Jesus was like, I'm Lord of the Sabbath. It's not necessarily what, it's who. And he knows the heart. And then this lost sheep comes up in 12 and 11 and 12. And immediately you think, well, it is about the lost sheep because we have that story in Luke 15. But we know that really it's about the shepherd. I mean, because a sheep couldn't be rescued without the shepherd with the one going up. But we tend to make it about that lost sheep, because he referenced that. He said that if any of you has a sheep and it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, this is verse 11, will you not take hold of it and lift it out? How much more valuable is a man than a sheep? Therefore, it is lawful to do good. I mean, he said that before he healed him. And he was making them be hypocritical because, as long as it's somebody else's sheep, you wouldn't care.
But you know what was really true about him? Let's take our last break. Is that they really did value the sheep more than the man.
Oh.
They really did think the sheep was more valuable.
And not your sheep, but theirs.
Yeah.
They don't care about yours.
No. Or they don't care about the guy with the shriveled hand. He was just a guy that was a prop to try to test you. The fact he was healed, instead of saying, well, that was pretty cool, instead they said, let's kill him.
And so the last thing I want to say, the contrast of the Pharisees was it led to a plot to kill Jesus. And verse 15 says, aware of this.
Yeah.
He was aware of the plot.
Yeah.
And I'm only making this point to make a greater point, which is right before he died on the cross, the first thing he said when he was up on that cross was, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." I mean, here they are, despite all these accusations and trying to trap him and now trying to kill him. Mm-hmm. Him being aware of that still offered forgiveness to his death. I mean, those are the contrasts in the Pharisee mind and the mind of Jesus, which is the polar opposite.
I wanted to mention one other thing, Jace, that we skipped this verse, but I think it's very cogent to what we're talking about. In verse 7, he said, if you had known what these words mean, the idea that something greater than temple is coming, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Now, that's interesting because that's the second time he's quoted Hosea 6:6. He said it the first time when Matthew was called, and they said, they asked the disciples, they said, why does your rabbi, why does he eat with these tax collectors and sinners? He said, well, it's not the healthy that need a doctor, it's the sick. And then he quotes Hosea 6:6. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. He does it here again in the same context, meaning that, to our point, he is greater. And so they were like, but he is there to help other people find him. That's what they were missing. I mean, the biggest problem with these legalist Pharisees, and same thing today, if they miss it, is that when you miss Jesus, you miss people and his love for people. Yeah. And we mentioned this whenever Jesus was tempted by Satan, that I had never really thought about before, but that last temptation up on top of that high mountain, Satan was going after his love for people and trying to basically say, if you make a deal with me, then we'll rule together. And Jesus said, nope, you can worship the Lord your God and serve him. But what the motivation was is that he loved people so much, that's why he came here to die. Which, to your point, Jays, a plot to kill him meant nothing to a guy who came to die anyway. I mean, exactly. He knew this was going to happen. I mean, this was just too early, you know?
It's embarrassing that religious people would do this, but then when you look at our culture today, there's still religious people doing this very same thing.
Right.
It comes back down to that. You know, I made this illustration before, which I think is a good one. There's a lot of religious people that view Christianity through a magnifying glass. Or a microscope. They're always trying to pick out what they don't like or what they don't agree with, and that becomes the whole narrative in their existence, and they're identifying with religion. It's like they're taking a course, trying to get all the answers right, figure everything out. Forget about other people and the movement and spreading Jesus. It's about what happens right here, and we want to try to do everything right. And instead, you know, God offers you a mirror, and the reflection that you eventually should see is Jesus. When you look in the mirror, you want to be looking not only to yourself, but you want to become an image of being Christ-like.
Christ in us.
Yeah,
because ultimately that is the prize, is to be conformed into the image of Jesus. That's the prize. Right. And I think about it, like all of this, all these guys worshiping and obsessive over the law and all the rules and the regulations. And when he says, he summed the whole thing up in two ways: love God and love your neighbor. And sum it all up, because that's the point of it all. And they missed the summation of all of it, and instead they focused only on the particulars of the law. They didn't get the big pitch. They didn't get the whole thing of what was the sum, what was the totality, what was he trying to do here. He said, love God, love me, and then love each other. That's it. It sums it all up.
My question is, what do legalistic-minded people, because I remember when I had an epiphany, reading on my own, and I'd look around and say, well, there's some people in here that are acting like Pharisees. But I got it from reading this.
Right.
But what do they do about, what does a legalistic person think when they read what we just read?
I think what they think, Jace, is that they don't think, because if you get to be legalistic and to be a Pharisee, you have to be extremely angry. And you stay stirred up, and you're so angry about how somebody else has fallen short or they don't have it right. And you're pointing fingers, and you just get in that mindset. You don't even have room to hear this. Even when he says in verse 7, if you had known, like what Al just mentioned, what this means, I desire compassion and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the innocent. I mean, even with him telling them, he's like, I'm telling you what this means, and they still didn't know it. They're blind to it, and I just think that the Lord, does blind certain people. I think you look in like Pharaoh. He hardened Pharaoh's heart because Pharaoh was so belligerent against the obvious miracles that God was performing. God's like, man, if that's the way you're going to roll, I'll strengthen your resolve against me. Then that's fine. If you're going to reject revelation, which is kind of what he's getting up to here in the very next part of the chapter, is when they blaspheme the Holy Spirit. It's like there's nothing you could do, nothing you can say, nothing that can be, no miracle that can perform. Ultimately, these guys are rejectors of truth. So I don't think they even see it.
Well, I tell you what the biggest problem is. They don't, legalistic mindset, their approach to the scripture is, I'm going to go there and find a passage that backs up the way I think or the way that I've been taught. And so that's their approach to scripture. That's why you get into some of these crazy thoughts, because they'll go in, instead of reading the whole context like we're doing, instead of a book of the Bible and what it meant then and there and what it means now, if you go in and try to cherry pick verses out to back up your ideas, that's what these guys did. They did that with the law. They just went in and cherry picked what they wanted.
They ate a little grain on the Sabbath. They healed a man with a shriveled hand right after that, and then that didn't work. Pharisees went out and plotted how they're going to kill Jesus. Then you get to when Jesus drives out a demon, all the people were astonished. Could this be the son of David? But when the Pharisees heard this, they said it's only by Beelzebub, the prince of demons, that this fellow drives out demons.
You try to kill him and you accuse him of being demon possessed. But
that means you've run out of arguments.
We only have a couple minutes, but look, there are still people on the earth today who are acknowledging the Sabbath and that are going by this rule system that Jesus seems to be bringing in contrast. So what would y'all say today when people say, well, you have to keep the Sabbath and make it holy today?
I would say the Sabbath is a great idea. The reason why God made it a law is that people should take a day of rest, but some sort of legal, you have to do this or you aren't right with God, is not biblical. And I think this proves that idea. And the Sabbath is not Sunday. Sunday's a day, it's traditionally that we meet, it's the first day of the week, but we can meet any day. I mean, Sunday's been great, but it's not a Sabbath.
We're not bound
to the days. You remember Paul said it clearly. Some people have one day over another. Some people honor this day and not that day, talking about holidays. So you just can't make this law. You have to look at it and say, Jesus was letting us know he is the answer.
When you watch a man from Monday through Saturday, that's who he really is.
Right.
Yeah. That's good.
I agree. I guess I'll close with this statement. I think about Hebrews 12. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus. Jase, I love the mirror versus microscope thought process. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus. And we're reading about people that were actually physically alive and able to look at him, and they couldn't see him.
That's it.
They saw everything else. And so we don't want to be that person, Let's fix our eyes on him and what he's done for us. All right, we'll try to do better next time. Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by rating us on iTunes. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube, and be sure to click that little bell to get notified about new episodes. And for even more content that you won't get anywhere else, subscribe to Blaze TV at blazetv.com/unashamed.